We want to talk about California ethics laws, what they cover, and most importantly, when you need to ask questions of your city attorney about how those laws apply to a given situation. Now, as you're thinking about the ethics laws, it's important to keep in mind that there are kind of two tools that people who write these laws have, including yourselves, if you have local ethics restrictions. Some of these laws are transparency requirements, and other of these laws are flat-out prohibitions. And so as you're thinking about these laws, it can be helpful to understand sometimes people can be frustrated because a transparency law doesn't necessarily prohibit something that may not be that great from happening. It just makes sure that there's an opportunity for the public to know about it. And either way, whether it's a prohibition or whether it's a transparency requirement, it's important to understand, as we saw in Bell, there are a limit, and I think you made this point, to how much you can legislate good behavior. And that's why, again, it's important to have the second part of the analysis. Now, if one doesn't be mindful of these rules, if one makes a misstep, some of the consequences for doing so can be fairly severe. A number of these laws are criminal laws, which means that missteps result in a loss of one's freedom, anywhere from 6 months to 20 years. There can be fines for missteps up to $250,000. Plus, some of you may remember the Randy Duke Cunningham case where he had taken some bribes and he had gotten some luxury items that he shouldn't have received in exchange for his vote on certain matters. When people do that, they don't get to keep the money or the luxury items. So he had to give back the yacht, he had to give back the house, and that's concepts known as restitution or forfeiture. Some of what doesn't sometimes get covered in the newspaper is how much defending oneself against charges cost. For just a minor violation of the Political Reform Act and having somebody represent someone before the Fair Political Practices Commission, kind of the minimum attorney fee is about $3,000. Sometimes the attorney's fees are more costly than the actual fine itself. But then, of course, if you're a Rod Blagojevich or someone like that who goes to trial a couple of times, you know, those attorney's fees can add up to the millions of dollars. And then there's also the personal costs, the stresses and strains on an individual of putting their family and having their friends watch them go through that. And when we interviewed the attorneys about how much these cases cost, they said, well, you have to make sure that you don't leave out the personal costs, because that's what actually they find to be most heartbreaking, is the stress that these kinds of enforcement proceedings put on people.